Hello and welcome back to Boring Dad Gaming, where today we're going to be carrying on with Arcadie, Secondborn, the interactive fiction that we're working through at the moment. We're going to pick it up directly where we left off. So we've been in the fort, Cyril's fort, for a couple of weeks now, so I think we're getting close to our plan to try and retake our capital and get revenge on Stanislas, who orchestrated the rebellion against us, the coup. So, let's start. The day reinforcements start arriving is a gloomy one. Grey clouds blanketing the sky high above. Scarce sun rays manage to pierce through, casting a cool light on the swaying grass. You spot Wilfred in the distance, standing atop the ramparts, looking down as hundreds of soldiers pour into the fort's courtyard through the open gates. Cyril is busy supervising the intake of new arrivals, careful to keep the whole process going as smoothly and orderly as possible. Names are noted down, barracks assigned, and soldiers sent to their respective units. Ariana oversees the whole thing from the side, standing tall, arms crossed, next to you. "We'll be moving to retake the castle in 7 days," she says, turning her head in your direction. "I hope you're ready for battle." Are we sure of ourselves? Are we going to question her slightly? Are we going to mock her? Or just be dismissive? I think we're just going to go with of course. She turns away, facing forward again, her attention drawn back towards your soldiers. Stanislas's... Let's try this again. Stanislas's days are numbered now. I nod. She crosses her arms and brings a folded finger under her chin. Her hair flutters in the breeze, a strand falling in front of her eyes before she pushes it back behind her ear. After we're done with Stanislas, it'll be Coltland's turn to pay. They will see that no one crosses Arcadie and lives. When she next looks at you, her lime green eyes are brimming with cold reserve. What are your plans for Coltland exactly? The same plans I have for anyone that crosses our path, razing them to the ground. I am done giving our enemies chances to turn around and strike us in the back. But first things first, Stanislas dies, then we'll see. Self-defense is one thing, but going to war at the drop of a hat will not endear us to anyone. You turn towards her, not missing the dark gaze she directs at you. Strong nations are more powerful when they have allies, you add nonetheless. Should Arcadie be as bloodthirsty as Stanislas says, we would run the risk of rallying every other country against us. You've given this a lot of thought, haven't you? She snaps. More thought than you've ever given to our parents' murder in any case. I don't know whether we I think we might use it as an opportunity to say don't turn into a bloodthirsty tyrant. Our parents being murdered doesn't justify you turning into a bloodthirsty tyrant. She lets out a sharp, short laugh. You have a nerve, little brother. She then sighs loudly. I'll be looking over the new recruits, she says before departing. Your 26th day in Fort Queenscliff starts like any other of the many days you've already spent here. Sunny at first, cloudy in the afternoon with a bit of breeze in the air as you survey the tents that have sprouted in the courtyard. The barracks not large enough to accommodate the upwards of 1,000 soldiers the fort is now housing. As you wander about, you find your idle thoughts drifting towards... Oh, go on, let's think about Cyril, shall we? You spot Cyril engrossed in talks with a circle of his lieutenants. His crossbow is strapped to his back, and he seems so focused that you're relatively certain he will not notice your passage. He looks up, however, from the map he's holding right as you walk by his side. He shoots you a bright smile, but his acknowledgement of you stops there as he quickly returns to his conversation. You continue ambling around, and your path takes you to the armoury. You stop there a moment. The small building is locked and blocking your idle stroll. It is quieter here. Deserted, too. You smell a bit of green in the air as you draw with each breath. It will probably rain in the coming days. All in all, there's nothing about this day that could signal that it could end with your death. That is, until you turn around and blink at the 2 sharp blades glinting a few feet away from you. Ooh, ha. 2 soldiers, Arcadians, they're wearing your colours, block off your path, staring you down and pointing their weapons at you. "That's just the youngest one," the man to your right mumbles to his co-conspirator. "Just kill him quickly," replies the other, and they move to do just that. Ooh, what are we going to do? We're reasonable with a sword, but can we fight against 2 enemies? It's a tricky one. I mean, I don't think I'm going to try talking my way out of this, but we could try and trick them. But then, if they turn around, we're in a dead end, aren't we, because of this locked armory? We could scream, but no one might hear us. I think we need to try and defend ourselves. You seize the grip of the sword at your hip and draw on it. The metal easily slides out of the scabbard and the hilt sits heavily in your hands. You're ready to face off against the opponents closing in on you. The one to your right lunges at you. You parry his strike with your weapon, kick him aside just in time to evade the other man's attack. You step away, raise your sword again to block off another cut, and the sound is loud, metal rasping against metal, brutal on your bones as you grit your teeth. Brace yourself to stop him from tearing your weapon out of your hands. You succeed in pushing him away, but he's back almost instantly, and when you slice at him, it catches him in the arm. A yelp, and he's down. You turn around. You've left yourself open to a counterattack as the other man has recovered and is ready to send his sword driving through you. You can only prepare a parry, weapon held sideways to divert his strike, your every muscle ready to hold fast and prevent your demise. A loud snap behind you and your opponent falls backwards to the ground. You blink, survey the scene. One of them is clutching his arm and howling in pain. The other stares up blindly, a bolt deep into his forehead. You spin around, just as these words reach you, uttered by a familiar voice. "Are you hurt?" Cyril, with a pack of soldiers right on his heels, approaches you with a concerned expression, his crossbow in his hands. "No, but they are," you reply. He nods and moves to take a long look at the man writhing on the ground. He folds his crossbow, slides it back behind his back, and bends down to pick up one of the discarded swords and inspect it. "Men," he says eventually, "to the dungeon with this one. The other one belongs in the morgue." The soldiers spring into action, and as they execute his order, Cyril sidles up to you. "Can you tell me exactly what happened?" They must have been following me and tried to strike when I was alone. They must have been following me around the fort, you surmise, as Cyril invites you to start walking with him, following his soldiers as they cart the traitor off. "Tried to strike when I was alone." "They're not my men. I don't recognize either of them," Cyril replies, tone low as you pass through ranks of curious soldiers. "Back to your posts," he calls out, breaking up the hubbub. He then adds in a lower voice, "They can't be Stanislas's men either. The reconnaissance team would have spotted them coming out of the royal castle's gates." You head to the dungeon. The access to the lower level of the fort is through a locked door to the side of the building. The descent through narrow, dimly lit stairs is not for the faint of heart, gloomy and damp. The dungeon itself is rather spacious, though its low ceilings and wavering lights give it a rather oppressive quality. There are about 10 cells, most of them empty. While the traitor gets himself locked up, the only other occupied cell is the one presently housing Lieutenant Thomas. He looks well, all things considered. He's half lying in a simple cot, a book in his lap while he watches the happenings with an amused gleam to his eyes. I think we need to be nice to Thomas. "Lieutenant Thomas, I'm sorry to see that you're still down here." You can see him push down a laugh. I can't remember his voice now. Was he Northern Irish? "Don't worry about me, Your Highness," he replies, slowly getting up to come stand near the bars. His shoulder-length hair is combed back, slick with water or oil. You're not quite sure with the way the orange light plays off his strands. His smile is quite affable, slow and easy, and he continues, leaning against the metal holding him away. "It seems one of your loyal subjects has tried murdering you. I can't say I'm surprised." "Thomas," comes Cyril's voice. He seems on the edge of concern as he walks slowly towards you, and on the other side of the heavy bars his lieutenant. "I'm sorry you feel that way. Sorrier still that you're speaking your misguided opinions out loud with such carelessness." Thomas doesn't seem to have anything to reply to that. He pushes himself off the bars, and his eyes fix themselves on the commander as they share a silent gaze. "I remain loyal to you, Sir Cyril," Thomas speaks suddenly. But I still agree with Stanislas. Insofar as Arcadie would be better off without the royal family at its helm. That's too bad, Cyril says softly, and his hands rest on his hips as he takes a long breath. You'll be remaining here until such time as you've changed your mind. The lieutenant looks relatively unperturbed at this news, perhaps because he was expecting it. He retreats into his cell with a respectful nod to the commander and a smirk to you. You leave the dungeon. We tried being nice to him. Why has he been horrible to us? What? You're not surprised when that's the first word out of Ariana's mouth when Cyril tells her about the attempt on your life. Why would Stanislas try to have him killed? Wasn't he just singing his praises in his letter? She crosses her arms in her chair, seated at the end of the table in the middle of the council room. I'm not sure those soldiers were Stanislas's men, Cyril says from his seat to your left. They arrived with the reinforcements from one of the forts south of Goldridge. Who's manning that fort? Ariana asks. Cyril looks down at an open book lying in the middle of the table. Captain Gardiella. Do you want them summoned? Not now. We're launching the assault in 5 days, but do send them a letter. We'll be getting to the bottom of this. Cyril nods. The prisoner will be interrogated. I will let you know what we manage to get out of him. What's being done to avoid a repeat of this? Ariana asks, eyes sharp while she flicks her wrist, impatience in her every move. Cyril looks at Wilfred opposite him. When the chestnut-haired commander fails to speak, he turns back towards your sister. You and Boring will have bodyguards assigned to you, picked among my most trusted soldiers. In the meantime, every lieutenant will be going through their unit's records and ascertaining each soldier's loyalty. Ariana gives him a long look. Wilfred frowns, but says nothing either. There is an edge of annoyance to Ariana's voice as she declares, That will have to do for now. Thank you, Sir Cyril. She stands up, signalling the end of the meeting. Boring, can you stay a minute? The two commanders take their leave, leaving you alone with your sister. Her face falls and she takes wide steps closer to you. I'm so sorry you went through this. Are you all right? She asks, lips in an unhappy line. I think so. She nods faintly. Stanislas will pay for this. He'll pay for this and for everything else, I promise. It wasn't his doing this time, though. Wasn't it? He's at the root of all of this. She nods gravely. As I said, rest assured he won't be getting away with any of this. You leave the council room. Cyril escorts you back to your quarters through darkened corridors and long hallways, the clink of metal and leather accompanying your steps. 2 soldiers are still at your back, and when you reach your quarters, Cyril introduces them. This is Finn, and this is Erin. Both of them are exemplary soldiers, and starting today they will guard you with their lives. They both bow quickly. Yes, sir! Cyril opens the door for you. Once you're both inside your room, he explains, For tonight they'll stand guard at your door. That should help you rest a little easier. The door closes behind you, and now there's only the 2 of you in your quarters. Candles twinkle on various surfaces, a wavering light that casts concerned shadows over Cyril's face. I never would have imagined you would get attacked inside my own fort, he says. But it was an oversight, you not having bodyguards. He walks away from the door, arms crossed over his chest. I promise you this. I won't let it happen again. His gaze travels across your face. Are you all right, Boring? These last few weeks can't have been easy on you. Let's just be honest. No, they haven't, and I have a feeling that it's not going to get any easier going forward. Cyril gives a small nod. If you need anything, please let me know. I will do my utmost to help you. A beat. He looks at the door, then back at you. I don't want to be too forward. If, we're mainly friends at the moment, so I don't want to... I don't like the options that are very in your face. I would prefer things to be a little subtler and organic and slower, and rather than sort of the BioWare jumping on everyone who looks at you askance. We'll just say good night. Good night, Cyril. Good night, Boring. Don't hesitate to call on the guards if need be. He then takes his leave. 4 days later. 4 days have passed, and you've convened in the council room again to discuss the last-minute plan changes and of what transpired through the would-be assassin's interrogation. The windows are wide open and their curtains flap in the wind. You glimpse the unit leaders, Cyril's lieutenants mostly, giving their troops instructions and orders. The shuffle and bustle flitting from the courtyard don't perturb your conversation, however. "Boring," Ariana calls, stirring you from your contemplations. "Change of plan. I want you to stay with me during the battle." "What? Why?" She crosses her arms. None of you are sitting, and she paces around the table, getting closer to you. A low buzzing noise suddenly thrums in your ear, and it grows louder with every step she takes in your direction. When she finally stops, 3 feet away from you, you find yourself gritting your teeth and unease, and inching away on instinct. It doesn't hurt, not really, but it's like 1,000 nails scratching a blackboard right behind you, and you physically cannot resist taking a step back, away from your sister. She eyes you with a frown as the buzzing somewhat subsides. Still, the hairs in the back of your neck are standing on end, and you can't help but wince when she again comes closer. "I will need you by my side tomorrow," she says, which doesn't really clarify anything, but at last she moves away and you can suddenly breathe easy again. You swallow and realize both Cyril and Wilfred's eyes are riveted to you, equal parts concerned and curious. You glance at Ariana and abruptly notice her own discomfort. She's not standing tall as she usually tends to do, hunched forwards by minute degrees, but still noticeable to a familiar eye. Her every muscle is taut, her hands are closed into tight fists, her lips are pressed together, and her eyes are narrowed too. "We'll move out tonight," she declares, her arm casting a wide gesture at the map on the table. "We'll launch the attack at dawn. So Cyril, you'll be the last to depart, correct?" Cyril answers in the affirmative. Ariana asks next, "What did you find out about the 2 assassins?"
Nothing we hadn't already guessed," he replies. "They indeed never were in the royal castle, and while they were of course familiar with Stanislas, they were never actually part of his troops."
He pauses to draw a light breath.
"There seems to be a few pockets of soldiers sympathizing with Stanislas's cause, in our own forts."
He gathers his arms in a loose grip.
"We will need to flush them out. Ideally, we should deal with disloyal subjects at the start of your reign, Your Majesty, rather than letting them brew and fester in the background for years."
"And you have a plan to do that, I suppose?" His gaze is steady as he says,
"Of course. That will be the peacekeeping force's mission in the months to come."
Ariana seems unwilling or uninterested to press the subject, and pronounces the meeting's end. In the courtyard. The courtyard is bustling with activity. Nary a soldier is able to rest or stop, as there are siege weapons to prepare, armour to gather, and weapons to whet. Let's go look for Wilfred. I want to talk to him about Ariana's change of plans. You and Wilfred you find Wilfred near the armoury, looking at a patch of grass reddened by the other day's attempt on your life. He watches your approach, back pressed against a stone wall, arms crossed not far below his sullen expression.
"Your Highness," he says, kicking away from the wall, "tomorrow will be your first real-scale battle, won't it?"
"Yes." He nods gravely.
"Remember, follow orders closely. Don't stray away from Ariana or me, if you can't stay with her. She needs you close by, so try to do that unless you would be putting yourself in danger. Do not charge ahead or alone, or you will find yourself overwhelmed. Stanislas's soldiers will be on the lookout for Ariana and you."
He gestures with his right hand, focusing on giving you instructions, and you wonder whether this is the tone of voice he uses when drilling his own soldiers.
"We will reclaim the royal castle, and not lose what's left of the royal family in the process."
Well, I don't want to question why we're both on the battlefield, because we've actually been stood down from the more active role that we had wanted to do. I'll do my best. He gives a small nod.
"Ariana is the strongest amongst us. We would not be able to carry out this battle plan without her," he says. "And you're the prince. You can't sit by the wayside while your soldiers fight to reclaim your castle. Were you to sit this out, you would be undermining yourself. You'd have no hope of fostering anything but disrespect from the troops and the kingdom at large."
I mean, we did put ourselves in the thick of the fighting, so I think we understand. He holds your gaze in silence a moment.
"Be that as it may," he speaks with a softer tone of voice, "your utmost priority on the battlefield should be your own survival, and Ariana's above all else. In that order."
Are you actually telling me to let Ariana die?
Not at all, but the kingdom would fare better with at least one of you alive. If Ariana were to find herself in real danger of dying, please consider whether you would truly be able to aid her before jumping into the fray. As I said, Ariana's survival and your own are paramount. Focus on that and we'll handle everything else.
What about your own survival? He huffs with a soft frown.
Secondary. I am but a commander of your armies, he replies unsurprisingly. My reason for being is to fight for the kingdom and ensure that the royal line remains on the throne. Were I to die in the process, it would be an honourable death.
There is no need to be so grim. There is more to life than duty. He regards you in silence a moment, pensively and a little subdued.
Be careful on the battlefield tomorrow, Your Highness, he says eventually.
You be careful too. He gives a quick nod and takes his leave. All right, well, let's look for Cyril then. Cyril is rather easy to spot. His blonde hair catches your eye almost as soon as you start looking for him, finding him amidst his lieutenants in a loose circle. As you approach, you catch fragments of a conversation not really meant for you, details you have no knowledge of, the order in which archers should draw and loose, and when the ladders should be deployed, and whether or not Sylvain would be able to operate the battering ram, or if he should be replaced by Natalie's unit. 5 pairs of eyes focus on you when you're only a few feet away, and Cyril swivels to face you, casting you a charming smile in the process. Carry on without me, he tosses behind him. I will be but a minute.
He doesn't stop when he reaches your level, catches your elbow in a soft grasp and guides you to a nearby empty tent. Once you're inside, he lets go of your arm, still smiling as he asks,
Is there anything you need, Borean?
Not really, I just wanted to see what you're up to. You share a long gaze and his smile fades, replaced by a pensive expression.
You will need to be careful on the battlefield, he says.
He steps on a small mound of dirt, flattening it underfoot.
Stanislas will be trying to get to Ariana first. Failing that, he will definitely try to get to you. I suggest not putting yourself on the front line. Stay with Ariana, Wilfred, or myself. We will defend you. And if you feel it is warranted, please do not hesitate to retreat to safety.
Are you planning to be careful? He gives the smallest nod, distracted an instant by the tense flap moving in the wind.
As careful as I can be, of course. My dying would serve no purpose.
You're telling me to act like a coward? He gives a minute shake of his head.
Not at all. I'm only suggesting you not take unnecessary risks.
I've said enough.
I have to rejoin my lieutenants, he declares.
Oh, go on then. This could be the last time we see each other. Your heart clenches in your chest with the realization that this could be the last time you see Cyril, the last time you witness his smile and the golden shimmer in his eye.
Our plan is solid, Boring,
he says, noticing your sour mood.
Our chances of winning are very high.
We could still lose, you remark.
Of course. There are no absolutes in war.
He steps closer and places a warm hand over your shoulders.
It will be fine, Boring.
You stare into his eyes and he gives you an encouraging nod. You nod back. Be careful on the battlefield, Cyril.
I will be. Good luck out there, Boring.
He squeezes your shoulder, casts a final smile your way and leaves the tent. I look for Ariana. You find Ariana still in the council room, now with its curtains drawn and lights dimmed. A few candles are lit, but the Aether chandelier is out and your sister stands, hunched over the map of your kingdom in the middle of the room. As soon as you've closed the door behind you, a malaise overtakes you, that same unpleasant buzzing you felt this morning, vibrating in your very bones and giving a metallic tang to your own tongue. Ariana turns towards you, candle flames barely outlining her face as she asks, You're feeling it too. Feeling what exactly? What is this? It's Aether, she explains, pulling herself away from the table. As she moves closer to you by degrees, the high-pitched screech grows incrementally in your ears. It's even worse than earlier, like 1,000 tiny ants scurrying around, right on the underside of your skin. You can't help stepping away, hand pressed to the side of your skull. It does little to abate your unease, only putting physical distance between you and your sister does. Ariana stops trying to reach you, and you feel more than see her gaze on you. I might have gathered a little too much of it, she says, crossing her hands behind her back. She steps further away to rest against the wall by the closed window.
I can't take the risk of losing tomorrow. We can't take that risk. The kingdom's future hangs in the balance. Isn't it dangerous, you ask, what you've done? I don't know. She looks away. I don't care. Letting Stanislas slip between our fingers is not an option. Tomorrow we will capture or kill him, and we will retake the castle. She gives a dismissive shrug and bats a stray umber hair away from her face. Anyway, too much aether shouldn't do any lasting damage. Once Stanislas is out of the picture, I'll be able to afford some rest. You're not the only one impacted here. Whatever you're doing is affecting me too. Oh, quit whining, she says, her tone of voice betraying her impatience. You're not feeling even the 10th of it. It starts getting harder to focus, a splitting headache on the verge of overtaking you. Go rest, she says, perhaps sensing your unease. There's only a few hours left before our departure. All right, I'll see you soon, Ariana. See you, she says, and you take your leave. Right, we're going to have a quick look at our status and relationships. See how it's changed. Still marginally more serious than playful. Pretty equally split between diplomatic and antagonistic. Pretty bold. Pretty emotional. Pretty friendly. Yeah, seems fair. Nothing really changed. Politics and tactics feel like it might be coming down. I might need to brush up on those at some point. But swordsmanship's still hanging pretty steady at 40%. Aether mastery and charge is the same still. We're maybe leaning more towards pacifist than we were previously. And very involved. We're not disengaging from anything. Let's look at relationships. Oh, wow. Our sister is now less than half. Bear in mind, she started the game at 79% affectionate towards us. We are rapidly losing her support. But I think she needs to be questioned. She is very much leaning down towards the warfaring path, and I kind of want her to become a more even-tempered ruler. So I'm going to keep calling her on stuff. Wilfred and Cyril both like us a lot, 69 and 70%. So that's pretty cool. Right, next. Night has fallen. Small clouds roll across the dark sky as soldiers line up, ready for battle, their metal armour gleaming in the moonlight. You're in armour too, helmet slung under your arm and sword at your hip. You hear Cyril's steps on the lush grass before you see him, and when your eyes meet, he parts with a smile.
This is the moment we've been waiting for, he says. It's time you retook your castle and avenged your parents' death, Boring.
Be careful out there. His smile widens and he fits his helmet over his head with a practiced gesture.
I will be, he assures you. You be careful too.
His hand closes around your arm in a soft hold, and you feel his silent reassurance through his touch. His fingers leave your arm and he walks ahead towards his soldiers. A clatter of armour as your army stands to attention, and your sister's voice thunders through the night. Soldiers! While your army watches her from both sides of the fort's gates, Ariana climbs the steps to the ramparts, overlooking the men and women who will be risking their lives for your kingdom tonight. My brothers and sisters, sons and daughters of Arcadie, she says once she has reached the top, voice ringing in the silence she has commanded. The day you've been waiting for has finally come, the day we would reclaim our castle and root out lawless snakes from our glorious lands. The metallic rivets in her leather armour shine in the moonlight, and there is a determined glimmer in her eyes as she declares, louder still, Tonight we will face Stanislas and his company of traitors and murderers. Tonight we spill their blood, the dark blood of liars and cowards, whose word means naught, and whose honour has long since been forfeit. They cannot hope to stand to us, to stand to you. They're hiding, trembling behind the castle walls. They do not have your loyalty. They do not have your courage, and they certainly do not have your strength. Tonight you will show them what it means to be a true soldier of Arcadie. Brothers and sisters, tonight... She pulls out her sword, brandishing it high above her head, and its metal glows bright orange with the power of aether. We will be victorious! Her risen sword is a beacon of light in the dark, and the soldiers around you cheer loudly, in a cacophony of swords and shields, the ground trembling with their eagerness for the upcoming battle. I will do what must be done. I mean, we know this is what has to be done. I don't think we're particularly happy about it, but equally, I think we see the rationale for taking a militaristic approach to this. You move out just as the moon disappears behind a thick grey blanket of clouds. You travel for several hours on horseback by your sister's and commander's side, heading for the royal castle you fled 1 month ago. The procession is mostly silent. After all, your goal is to inconspicuously and stealthily proceed under the cover of the dark night. When you're a mile away from the castle, you slip out of the plains to sneak inside the forest, circling the fortified buildings side and back. Dense trees will give you enough cover to lurk closer without the soldiers on the ramparts, whose presence you can surmise from the bright torches at their sides, spotting you from a distance. Cyril's unit lingers back, getting into position to prepare the impending attack on the castle's gates, the diversion needed for Ariana to create an opening in the wall. You temporarily abandon your mounts at the outskirts of the woods. They would not be able to proceed smoothly in the shrubbery. 30 minutes, Ariana says, a reminder that Cyril will be proceeding with the first phase of the plan after that amount of time has passed. You follow her between the trees into the dark forest. Ahead of you, navigating easily through the woods, are the soldiers of Ariana's small squad, 20 men and women hand-picked by Cyril. Behind you trails Wilfred at the helm of his own company, half of your total force, several hundred soldiers, while the other half remained with Cyril. The trees stand a little apart from each other, clustered only in some specific spots. Walking in their midst is not the ordeal you might have expected. The only impediment to your movement might be the near absence of light, but you find yourself quickly adjusting to the dimness. Except for the sound of footsteps and your own breathing, the forest is deadly silent. You're almost at the back of the castle when cries of alert erupt, a distant echo almost lost to the night. Your group quickens its pace, and as you reach the edge of the forest you glimpse the walls of your family's castle, grey and high against the black sky, the very same walls that have watched you grow up. You've been gone a month from your home, and now has come the time to reclaim it. As you finally reach the outskirts of the woods, the predetermined point where you are to start your assault on the castle, it is clear, from the sounds of violence rising ahead, that Cyril's forces have launched their attack on the gates. Ariana looks back at you, her eyes locking with yours for the briefest moment before she turns to survey the soldiers at her back. She gives them a signal, a swift move of her hand and a beckoning motion, and the small unit moves as one, walking in her steps as she bolts, stance low out of the forest and onto the clear plain. We'll go with her. I don't want to antagonize her any more needlessly. You move with her, under the barely there moonlight that, although dim, makes you feel utterly exposed over the grassy plains. You run, fast and close to the ground, darting across the empty expanse towards the castle walls. As you look up, towards the ramparts, you can see lights and hear the noises of battle coming from the other side of the castle, but thankfully none seems the wiser to your current approach. The wall is within reach, only a few feet away. Thwack! You come to a stumbling halt as an arrow stabs the ground in front of you. You look up. The archer that has almost impaled you looks right back at you. They shout something, and more archers appear high above. "We've been spotted!" Ariana cries aptly, not stopping her dash towards the walls. You maneuver around the arrow, sprinting after your sister, and when you come within arm's reach, she quickly reaches for you, pulling you close. The contact sends a painful jolt of energy through you, making your teeth grind against each other, and your fists tighten reflexively. But before you can bat her away, she pushes you with these words. "Cover me! I need you to keep the archers off my back while I focus!" You look back towards Ariana's squad. 20 soldiers now at your disposal, all of them equipped with a bow as well as a sword. No, well, I think we've prepared for this, and I think we don't want Ariana to die. So I order the soldiers to aim for the archers, making sure they are synchronized for maximum efficiency. "Notch!" you order quickly. Time is of the essence as you're currently out of cover, at the mercy of the archers high above, who also have the advantage of the higher ground, Anakin. "Draw!" you say next, and your soldiers point their bows up, ready to let go of their arrows when you next command it. "Loose!" you cry out, and 20 arrows whiz out into the damp night air. You hear a yelp above, and behind you feel a high-pitched buzz crawl right at the base of your skull. You pivot around. Ariana is glowing, a beacon of the destruction she is aiming to unleash on the castle wall. She gives you no time to prepare before she dashes forward, connecting with the wall in a blinding ball of energy. The ground shakes under your feet and you sway, fighting to keep your balance. Light explodes in front of you, almost an earthquake, stone fragments flying out all around and above you. You huddle down on instinct, protecting your head from any debris that might strike it. When you next raise your head, amidst the dust and the dry coughs you fight back, you are able to gauge the damage done to the castle's structure, much greater than you had anticipated. A 20 feet wide section has been destroyed, bottom blown apart and top crumbled on top of it. The grass is littered with rocks of all sizes, and the bulk of the wall has collapsed inwards, bestrewn in huge chunks inside the castle proper. Beyond Ariana, in between the rubble, you spot multiple faces staring your way. Lit torches peppered across the castle grounds, their fiery reflection dancing on the metal breastplates of Stanislas's soldiers. Amidst the sudden quiet, Ariana marches on, gait resolute and hands steady as she draws her longsword. She effortlessly scales the rocky debris and you follow her, your soldiers trading their bows for their swords, and Wilfred's unit moving out of the forest behind you. You emerge in the middle of the gardens. They are almost as you remember, sprawling with flowers and verdant grass, only now crushed under boulders and heavy granite from the shattered wall. Hundreds of pairs of eyes watch your sister as she comes to stand atop the stones and rocks, all that remain from the castle wall. She is a tall silhouette, highlighted by wavering flames, and the gazers on her are either awed or alarmed, the difference minute as she starts speaking, voice ringing in the sudden lull. "I am Ariana d'Arcadie," she declares, "the kingdom's rightful queen." Dust has not finished settling, and it shimmers in the night, twinkling stars around your sister. "Lay down your weapons, or die by the traitor's side. I will show no mercy to any who stand by Stanislas." You turn to the left as a loud bang rings out, a battering ram attacking the gates. Cyril's forces, on the other side of the still closed gates, are still trying to break them down. Crack! Sharp metal against a solid blade, and your head swivels back towards Ariana as she deflects an arrow that's just been shot at her. "Soldiers!" Oh, hang on a minute. What was Stanislas's voice? "Soldiers!" A male voice booms, and you recognize Stanislas in the midst of his troops, longbow still raised in your sister's direction. He is still sporting the uniform of a commander of Arcadie, midnight blue and blood-red trim. He has the same black eyes you remember, dark hair casting a bluish reflection as he passes near a torch, a new arrow notched at his long wooden bow. "The Queen will show no mercy to any of us, nor shall we have any for her." You notice deep red fabric around both his forearms, running down and rolled against his palms. Bandages, or simply meant for decoration, you cannot tell. "Ariana," he calls, "the soldiers of Arcadie no longer have need for kings and queens, least of all one such as you." He aims his bow back at her. "Brothers and sisters," he shouts, "it's time we rid the realm of the self-serving line of D'Arcadie tyrants." A loud cry, his soldiers utterly undeterred by Ariana standing over them. She remains rooted in place, unmoving, unspeaking before the hundreds who stand defiantly against her rule. But as Stanislas sends flying a new arrow, she barely manages to evade. She backs away, letting Wilfred's unit into the castle proper. Your soldiers meet Stanislas's in a clash of swords and screams. To your left, the gate cracks open with a loud bang. Cyril's forces have now joined the fray, and they ram into makeshift fortifications in a clatter of wood and metal. Ariana joins you, and you notice her slack expression, lost in distant thoughts rather than the present moment. Her green eyes snap to you, and suddenly she's holding you by the arm, screaming above the clamour of battle. "Boring! I need you!" I'm here. What do you need?" "Give me your hand," she says, and you notice she's holding a knife. "It'll be quick," she promises, slashing the palm of your hand in a swift motion and immediately clasping it in hers. A sensation, as unpleasant as it is brief, ensues. Heat, right under your skin, scalding your nerve endings, running from your shoulder to your fingertips. It ends as quickly as it had started, pain subsiding the instant Ariana lets go of you, triumph in her lopsided smile. She unsheathes her longsword again and faces back towards the ongoing battle. You both watch as more of your soldiers pour into the castle, clashing with force with the enemy. "Let's get Stanislas," she exclaims, casting you a glance above her shoulder before launching herself forth. You dash behind her, trying to avoid tripping over the gravel littering what was once a beautiful garden, now a scene of combat and dread. Swords strike, men scream, arrows plunge into what exposed flesh they can find. One misses you by a hair, a loud whiz by your ears as you push yourself to keep up with Ariana's brisk pace. "Soldiers!" she yells, a long sword brandished over her head. "With me!" A rallying cry meant for your own men, but that you can't help but fear might only attract the enemy's attention. As it turns out, your instincts aren't wrong, and an arrow narrowly misses her, making her shift to her right, glancing up at the ramparts where most of the enemy archers are still looking down at you. A roar makes you face left, and you spot a fully armoured knight running right at her, his sword in hand ready to strike her down. Ariana does not seem to have noticed, however, and with her back turned to you, you can't make anything of her awareness of the danger. "Ariana, watch out," you cry. The knight is within striking distance now, and just as he is about to bring his sword down on her, Ariana lays her eyes on him. A quick flick of her arm and the longsword is knocked out of his hand in a long rising arc, while he loses his balance completely, as if swept off by a furious gale. Ariana steps away, watching him heavily crash to the ground, and before he can attempt to get back to his feet, she plunges the tip of her sword into the gap between his helmet and armour. While more enemy soldiers approach to try their hand at taking her down, a group of your own men has answered her earlier call, flanking the both of you on all sides to prevent any further treacherous attacks against their queen and prince. "Onward!" Ariana orders, undeterred, and you march on through the gardens, in the midst of the raging battle. While your soldiers manage to deal with most of the opposition in your path, Ariana and you must defend yourselves as well. Several hours pass. Or is it only a few minutes? It's all a blur of blood, sweat and adrenaline, pushing and slicing through the enemy. Your sword arm is beginning to hurt, the shock of metal on metal shaking your shoulder as you continually parry and slash. Your ears are abuzz with the screams and blood-curdling cries, the sounds of war quickening your heart, turning your stomach, and tightening your grip around your sword. I don't think I hate it. I don't think I love it. I think it has to be done. We're sort of grimly determined on this, and that's all there is to it. You think you've reached the castle courtyard proper. There is a solid pavement under your leather boots, and no more friable soil or destroyed flowers. "There you are!" Ariana shouts, half exhilarated, half furious, and from her tone you infer that she has spotted Stanislas at last. Indeed, as you peek ahead, you glimpse Stanislas several feet ahead, having traded his bow for a regular longsword. Several soldiers are standing between you and him, however. Up the ramparts a sudden yell, and a woman meets her demise on the hard ground, an archer thrown down by Wilfred's unit from what you can tell. You spot the man himself atop those very same ramparts, facing off against another soldier in close quarters, while his squad works to rid the area of the occupying force. To the left, Cyril's unit is facing a bit more opposition. There are barricades that have been erected inside the castle, and they are successful at slowing down their advance, at least for now. Still, you're with Ariana, and your mission is to take out Stanislas. Your small group clashes again with his soldiers, men and women, steadfast and fierce, every one of them. There is something different in the way they fight, devoid of fear, full of staunch, righteous determination. It is unnerving how they seem to see you as an obstacle in their path, while just a month ago these very same men and women were sworn to defend you with their lives. Now it is your very life they strive to take. You hear Stanislas shout something over the clamour. You can't make much sense of it as you're facing off against a rather young recruit, her helmet a little too big over her head, almost hiding her big eyes as she grits her teeth at you. You've seldom been watched with as much hate and vitriol as is held in her gaze, and you're certain that, in this moment, your death would bring her all the happiness in the world. She rushes at you, her moves quickened by her small size, and while you're at first surprised by her agility, you quickly adjust and counter her strikes with your own. She is not a skilled fighter, but what she lacks in talent she makes up with tenacity. As she makes an attempt to hit it up at your neck, you deflect to the right, leaving her open to a subsequent fatal attack. In the split second that follows, her eyes are round, and she knows she is about to die. I'm not going to kill her. I think we need to show that we're not the bloodthirsty murderers that Stanislas is painting us at, so I'm actually going to disarm her and leave her uninjured. The pommel of your sword connects hard with her right hand, and the momentum of her own failed attack makes her fall to the ground. You leave her there, turning as Ariana screams, so loud it startles you. "Stanislas, don't you dare run away!" Your eyes flick to the object of her ire. Stanislas is indeed backing away, running off out of your field of vision. Ariana instantly gives chase. Your surprised soldiers struggle to keep pace, as they're in full metal armour, while she's barely slowed down by her leather protections. You run after her, fast, faster than your soldiers, narrowly dodging a sword aimed at your neck, and hearing the men behind you tackling your would-be murderer. Ariana is striking down any who stand in her way, swift and quick, all swirls of her lutetium sword and impatient displays of aether as she shoots off her opponent's weapons right out of their grasp, sweeping them literally off their feet to stab them dead in a whirlwind of blood. Wow. Deep red drips down the length of her blade, and she follows Stanislas as he dives inside the northern castle wing, the one you visited last 1 month ago, the one which holds the meeting room where your parents were murdered, the one which witnessed the start of it all. Something crumbles loudly behind you, and as you look back, you see the barricades being finally torn apart by Cyril's men, and you spot Cyril himself commanding his soldiers forward. Ariana has entered the castle, and so you follow. Inside the castle it is entirely dark except for the flickering torches on the walls. The entrance hall is large, a magnificent hallway that used to sparkle when beams of sunlight warmed the golden-rimmed shadows, now reduced to a sombre, empty, and lifeless shadow of itself. There are stairs on either of its sides leading up to the meeting room, but that is of no immediate concern, as that is not where either Stanislas or Ariana is headed. Stanislas has rushed ahead into the throne room, located on the ground level, and your sister is right on his tail, footsteps ringing loudly in the empty wing, while the battle rages on outside. You go after them. The doors to the throne room are as wide as they are tall. Inside, the high roofs are held up by long stone beams on either side of a red carpet. Were it daytime, the throne room would be flooded with multicoloured light cast by the stained glass windows throughout the hall, on the walls and behind the 2 thrones at its end. Now, however, torches are the only source of light, casting a long shadow under Stanislas as he kneels to retrieve a round object right in the middle of the room. Several feet away, Ariana watches him, breath still quickened by her recent running, and as he holds up what you recognize as a shield with his left arm, she explodes in outrage. "That's my family's shield!" And the doors loudly slam shut right behind you. Ariana looks back, sparing only a glance of her narrowed eyes at the doors before facing Stanislas again. "Not only are you a murderer, a coward and a liar, but you're a thief as well." She paces around him slowly, inching closer by careful degrees. "I shouldn't be surprised. No matter, you'll soon atone for all of your sins with your life, Stanislas." His name between her teeth sounds like an insult, but he spares no reaction for any of her words, positioning himself in a battle-ready stance. "How are your hands not burning up?" Ariana asks suddenly, ire momentarily leaving her voice to be replaced by a curious indignation. "This shield is made of lutetium. No one but the Arcadie line can hold it." The shadow of a smile appears between his lips. "There are many things you don't know, Your Majesty," he replies with a sort of fake, affable friendliness, probably meant to aggravate Ariana further, and succeeding remarkably well at it. "There is one thing I know for certain," she snaps back, sword at the ready, body taut like a spring ready to burst forward. "I will make you pay. I will make you beg for a quick death, and I will not be giving it to you, not until I've made you rue the day you chose to turn on us." She gives no heed to the fact that you are presently both trapped in a room with Stanislas as a result of a clear plan of his own. "Indeed, you are your parents' daughter," he says, a smile in his voice. "Boastful, pugnacious, excellent at threatening and exacting violence, and not much else." Ariana is about to attack. If you wish to intervene in any way, it is now or never. All right, let's think about our options here. There is no need for this. Stanislas could surrender. No need for further bloodshed. He might listen to reason. Or we let her do what she's going to do. Let's see if he listens to reason. He does like us. Stan, there's no need for further bloodshed. He might listen to reason. Aren't you a proponent of peace? He watches you intently, dark eyes gauging you in silence. I am, he says eventually, readjusting his shield. Your family's shield, eyes now locked on Ariana. But for Arcadie and her people to know peace, your family has to be removed from the throne, once and for all. Why so adamant that my family must pay the ultimate price for Arcadie to be at peace, you ask? You never even tried to parley with us. You simply decided to murder my family at a peace meeting. Stanislas looks at you once more, saying nothing while you continue. What sort of peace are you planning to usher on the back of murder and deceit? There is a strange air of amused melancholy crossing his features. It's a pity. Had the rest of your family been more like you, we might have been able to reach a compromise once. Now, however, it is far too late. Your sister scoffs. Indeed it is. Ariana rushes forward with a scream, and her blade meets with the round shield in Stanislas's grasp. A loud metallic clang rings out, splitting your ears. What little aether she has left, Ariana must be using now, as her moves are too quick to be natural. Stanislas holds his ground remarkably well, however. He shows himself to be a skilled fighter, as he either blocks or evades all of her attacks, no matter how swift they are. Dawn light starts pouring through the windows, and it casts a blue and purple glow on every one of your sister and Stanislas's moves, their blades drawing a dance that could be elegant if it weren't meant to end in death. We could check the doors. You turn back, heading quickly towards the exit, and try your hand at opening the massive wooden doors. You grab the handles, pulling firmly on them, but they don't budge. You try again, to no avail. The doors seem to be blocked from the other side. You swivel back when you hear a loud crash behind you. Stanislas is face to the ground, and your sister moves quickly before he has a chance to recover, aiming down her sword at the middle of his back. Not quick enough. He rolls away, standing up fast, but he's lost his sword in the process, the blade lying abandoned a few feet away. He still has your family's shield, however. I've changed my mind, Ariana declares, and your eardrums suddenly vibrate painfully. I'll grant you a quick death after all, Stanislas. You have to resist the urge to press your hands over your ears, to protect them from the deep buzz filling the room with hot anger as Ariana's sword shines red, infusing the hall with scorching heat and blinding light. When she lunges forward towards Stanislas and aims at him in a finishing strike, he holds his ground, round shield held up to block her attack. But you know, from having witnessed Ariana in action before, that her aether-fueled strike cannot be parried. It will cut through the shield and through him in one swift move. When the sword connects with the shield, there's an ear-splitting clash, a burst of light that makes you press your eyes shut. And when you open them again in a squint, Ariana has been hurled several feet backwards. Stanislas is still standing, unscathed, his whole body taut from bracing himself against the impact, and the shield is intact in his grasp, glowing faintly red. Ariana quickly recovers, undaunted and unharmed too, but astonished still that her aether-charged attack has not ended the fight. How? She asks. You? Voice raising, she grips her sword tight, teeth gritted as she looms closer. You can't, she maintains. You cannot wield our shield. You cannot use aether. Stanislas deigns not to answer, using her momentary befuddlement to sprint aside, retrieving his sword from the ground and directing an upward slash at her. What follows is an exchange of blows, loud clashes of metal, while Stanislas's moves are just as swift and precise as before. Ariana seems slower, perhaps having drained what reserve of aether she had left. What are we going to do? I think we're going to join the fight and help her. I mean, I don't want my sister to die. Your sword is a heavy weight in your hand as you approach the two combatants. You watch a little to the side as their blades meet in a rattle of metal, once, twice. The third time, neither of them relent, weapons grinding against each other until Stanislas throws a solid kick into Ariana's midsection. She fumbles back, and before he can try to seize the opportunity to strike her, you step in his way. His dark eyes snap to you, quizzical only for an instant before he directs the full force of his deadly focus on you. He throws a quick thrust your way, aiming at your shoulder. You sidestep, mostly on instinct, striking back, but he easily blocks you with his shield, just as Ariana aims her sword at his neck. He's not quick enough to completely avoid it. You see a spurt of blood, his eyes squeezed shut as he hisses in pain, spinning away to put distance between you. There is a cut on the left side of his face, blood dripping down from the red line stretching from his jaw all the way back to his ear. Ariana lets out a short laugh next to you, and Stanislas looks between you, breath shorter and gaze harder. Bright dawn light washes into the long room. The multicoloured panels cast bejewelled changing colours over the stone floor, the red carpet glinting off Stanislas's sword and shield. He goes into a lower stance, shield raised and blade pointing downwards. He waits for either of you to strike first. I think it probably makes sense for Ariana to go first and us to back her up, because she is the better fighter. The smell of blood is everywhere. You're not sure why you hadn't noticed it before. Not sure if you're only noticing it now because there is a clear wound on Stanislas's face. But as your eyes trail down, you notice droplets of blood all over, on the stone beams, on the stone floors. You're not sure of their origin and don't have time to wonder. I don't know how you're able to use our shield, Ariana says, and I don't care. I'll let Nathaniel have a field day with your corpse. He'll have answers. I don't know who Nathaniel is. Blood is drawing thin lines along the left side of Stanislas's face, dripping down onto his dark blue jacket, and you notice the slightest shiver of exhaustion in his sword arm. I'm done with this. With a loud cry, Ariana lights her sword on fire again. The glow of her sword is dimmer than before. She must not have much aether left at her disposal. Stanislas braces himself all the same, shield at the ready. She springs forward, and it seems her sword will meet with his shield again. An unnatural whirl, her body twisting as fast as a spinning top, and she is at Stanislas's side, bringing her sword down on his unprotected body. Stanislas slides back fast, and her sword hits the ground. Shards of stone fly out, and before Ariana can raise her blade again, Stanislas counterattacks, hitting out at her, not with his sword, but with the shield. You squeeze your eyes shut at the sudden explosion of light. You step back, terrible noise and the buzz you've come to associate with aether crawling painfully along your spine, and the room fills with scorching heat. When you blink your eyes open, you can only stare at the gaping hole in the wall several feet ahead of Stanislas. Your sister is nowhere to be seen. Stanislas spares you no mind, stepping forward towards the opening in the wall. He steps over the rubble and disappears from view. You follow him. You stand at the edge of the destroyed wall. On its other side, your sister Ariana, kneeling in the grass, surrounded by soldiers, none of them yours, is getting to her feet with clear hardship. Her uniform, once blue, is black and grey with dust, and the right side of her in particular is all shades of wrong, blood wrong. She tries, fails to hold up her sword with her right hand. It almost slips out of her bloodied grip, and she steadies it with her shaking hand, breathing hard and gritting her teeth. She can barely stand. Yet, as Stanislas stops 3 feet in front of her, she stubbornly tries to face off against him again. His back to you. Stanislas raises his own blade in her direction. I'm going to intervene. I'm not going to let her die. You move forward. Ariana slashes at Stanislas. Clumsy, too slow, no strength behind it. Stanislas sidesteps easily, and, for a split second, Ariana's eyes meet with yours. They're green and bloodshot, and for the first time in your life you discern terror in them. Stanislas drives his sword through her back, and it comes out through her heart. Her knees meet with the soft ground. A lifeless fall. Her gaze locks with yours one final time, wide and green and dull. And she crumples forward, never to stand again. And I think we're going to leave it there for today on that cliffhanger. Wow. I'll be honest, I didn't see her dying. I don't know if that's something you can avert through choices. I mean, I tried to support her and protect her as much as I could. I guess I could have attacked Stanislas first, or whether it's just fated to happen, I don't know. But that's certainly a very interesting development. And I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, then please do hit the thumbs up button on the video. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you think about the story, about this playthrough. And yeah, subscribe to the channel if you've not done so before. That'd be absolutely fantastic. And I'll hope to see you next time for the next installment of Arcadie, Second Born. Bye for now.